Yeah, go ahead.
Just so you guys know too, and the reason I call this a conversation with our kids, because sometimes we want to talk at our kids a lot and not listen. But the reason I do these things, this is the second part that we've done this conversation with our kids, because we want to hear from the kids. So synchronize however you want to do it, but we're going to start deep corner in the back. And I want you to stand up. I want you to say who you are. And whether you like this show or not, if you have a question for anybody in particular, it don't got to be long. But if you appreciated what you learned from it, and if you would recommend it for someone else to learn the same lesson. All right?
Don't be embarrassed. It's right.
I'm just crying.
Okay, I'm Deja. I'm from Philly, and I actually attended the high school for creative and performing arts in Philly. I don't really have a question, but I do have a comment about the education topic. I took from this whole play exactly what they were just talking about, the fact that children don't appreciate the education that we're receiving, and I get that a lot in my school also, because my school more so focuses on the arts more than the education, the academics. And I just recently asked my mom if she could like transfer me to another school where I could actually take in more education than art. I want to learn.
Cool. I want to make a really quick comment. I was just thinking about while they were talking, and on the subject of kids not wanting to learn. I want to ever so slightly play the devil's advocate, just speaking for myself. As a younger guy, and as a guy who's probably the youngest person involved in the show, I always want to learn. And this is something that's a little bit more directed at the adults. I've always wanted to learn. I found that the institutions with which I was educated were filled with people who were not passionate or who were disenfranchised by virtue of how those institutions are organized. And the fact that there are budgets being, we talked earlier about why can't someone speak up for this guy who was innocent, right? The question I would ask is why can't we speak up for one, the presence of our education and the importance of it and the pluralism of it? And then also I think one of the best lessons we get from this show is that the way that Grant truly gets to Jefferson is by being personal with him and acknowledging what he cares about and what he thinks. And I think what Lenny said, if you have a subject you really like, I think that is the best thing ever. And it's incumbent upon the people who nurture that for you to do the best job they can. It's incumbent upon you as a student or whatever to pursue that with everything you have. Doing theater and things like that personally saved my life, and I feel more educated on it than most people I've ever met. But the truth, the reason I say that being is like if you are passionate about something, or if you are passionate about people being passionate, there is nothing more amazing than that. And as much as we can say, I think that there are kids and there are problems with being distracted and things, but I don't think that's a generational thing. I don't think that's a now thing. I think it's a matter of everybody needs to put their passion in, no matter if you're the teacher, the student, the principal, the person who's voting for whoever, the person who's donating money to whatever. Think about that because it's important.
So we're not going to let this lady tell the hook on the back, are we?
No. I want to say something too, because I want to add to that, and I want to get to the kids, and so I'm gonna put the adults on the spot for just a minute. You know Kenya McFarland? Huh? Yeah, I met her yesterday. She's a nice young lady at Kappa. I used to be a full-time teacher, and now I teach part-time. I don't want that to overshadow Grant, but I had some experience with this, with him, and so I've thought about this for some years. So this is in my head. So in the show, Grant's parents have ran off, right? And presumably, in my backstory, they ran to the north, right? So did his parents. They left him. The language specifically said they were left behind, so they left him. So the older folks in the community stayed behind, and they took care of him. You was playing an older person, huh? But I thought about this before I came up with this idea, right? Young people, bear with me for a second. This was 1948, right? I had older parents, right? And what I realized over the years is a lot of times as adults, right, as current adults, we talk to young people like we did it right, right? I hear that far too often, and it's extremely frustrating. And one thing that I ask one of my parents a while back is, you know, one thing they asked me, is there anything I could have did better? You could have been more honest, like real honest.
Yeah.
Right? Parents and adults tend to, we tend to approach young people with this idea that if I tell you that things were perfect when I was younger, right, and that I didn't run off, or I didn't study, or I didn't cut class, right, that they won't do it, right? Well, I think that's problematic. And so then we get in conversations like this, and then young people feel alienated, they tune you out, they don't want to be involved anymore because mom and dad and folks around me talk like everything's perfect. Maybe we don't do it intentionally, but it's something that we see. It's something that I certainly have observed, right? And I want our parents and the elders in our community to be honest with young people. Because Grant's parents and Jefferson's parents weren't an exception. They might not have been the rule, right? But it certainly wasn't just a couple of them, right? A lot of y'all parents and mentors and big brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, y'all did some stuff in the 70s and the 60s. You know what I'm saying? That are relevant,
The late 2000s even.
that are extremely relevant to a young person's experience right now. I really get frustrated by this idea that the elders got it all right, and young people now, just because they listen to rap music, do it all wrong. We know that. The reality is, right, W.E.B. Du Bois hated jazz music. And he hated the kids in the 20s who listened to it during the Harlem Renaissance, right?
Yeah.
That was a reality, right? Now, jazz music, if a young person walks up to you and says, I listen to jazz and I don't listen to hip-hop, you think, wow, you're astute. You don't listen to Lil Wayne? Right? I mean, it's that idea, that concept. And I think that as adults, sometimes we need to pull back from our own hiding from ourselves and saying, you know what, Sophie? I did it too. I cut 8th grade one full week. You know, or whatever, you know, I mean. But I think that's a part of the solution. I think that we can't only say to young people that you have to do this, 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 and this, right? And don't offer them any context into who we are as the adults that are trying to raise them. Because that's not fair. Because they grow up like the adults we are and say, well, dang, this is real. Adulthood is real. And I could really use some perspective. So I really want to talk about acting now.
Yeah. So we're going to be short on time soon. So if we hear a couple more things from people or questions people
Any
have, we'd
particular
love to hear
kids that
that.
have any questions right first? Foremost?
Yeah, any
Right
kids
here,
have questions?
17.
Well, this question is for the man who played Jefferson's character, and I just want to know what it was like for you preparing for this role.
Well, preparing for this role, it was pretty hard. It was a side of anger and helplessness that I didn't really want to deal with at first. But going through the rehearsal process, it kind of opened me up a little bit more and be more receptive to the situation that I was in. I applied a lot of my own life issues to it and understanding about situations that's going on now. And I know people that have been incarcerated or have been on death row, you know, for things that they haven't, you know, that they were not, you know, proven, well, they were innocent, but they were, you know, wrongly proven guilty. So I had to deal with that side of it, but you know, it was a hard process, but we got there through a lot of different means.
Yeah, we beat the guys up pretty bad actually in rehearsal. We do a lot of improv work. So we get off the text and we do activities with these actors that are often quite awful, really awful. But what they do is they let them summon up the emotions they need to find, and in the safety of the theater, with us working together and trusting each other, we're able to do it. And then there's a whole lot of post-improv support so that people don't fall apart. We had one night, I guess it was like 2.5 hours, where his life was awful. I mean, we just did everything we could to sort of give him the feeling. And yeah, we worked together as there was 4 of us. We hit him with sticks and stuff. It was horrible. Not hit him with it, poked him, but
That's
it was
nice.
pretty awful. He's blindfolded. It's pretty horrible. And that helped him get there too. I mean, he reaches in deep in him, as the play says, for some of it, and some of it we're pushing. Another question
I
from
just
you?
wanted to share something. Sure. This is a photo that I took of the author, in case you've never seen.
I see
Ernest
that.
Gaines.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Yeah, Ernest Gaines.
Ernest Gaines.
The author of the book.
Yeah.
The author
Yeah.
of the play.
Yes.
Oh,
Cool, thank you.
This Ernest Gaines wrote the book, Romulus Linear.
Right, Russian flag.
Yeah, keep it down.
Yeah, yes.
This question is for Grant.
Yes.
How did they come up with the character not to be able to believe it?
Thank you.
But knowing that you're from down south and that during that time, I know it was probably big during that time that that there was always God in the picture.
Right.
How did you go about that?
Well, I mean, the playwright, it was there. I mean, it came with the text. What I did was, as an actor, I began to create whatever I thought his life was like beyond the text. And for me, I think Grant became disillusioned with religion probably in college. And he probably had some doubts as a young person before he even left. They talk about Grant and Vivian being the gifted young people in the community. And I think the gift and the curse of him, excuse the pun, is that he's a thinker. And like I said, for me as the actor to create what I thought about Grant is how can God exist in under these circumstances? And then he went to college up north somewhere, and he just became more and more disenfranchised with the idea that God could cause people this kind of suffering and pain, what his community was going through. And then he just got angry. I think he may have had a natural curiosity to say, I don't know if this is real, right? I don't know if I buy this. I don't know if I believe these fairy tales and things like that. And then he got back and he got disenfranchised from the idea of being a teacher, what's supposed to be a very noble profession, right? Imagine that. The community paid for him to go away to school to come back and do this wonderful thing. And he got there and he said, y'all don't want to learn. They don't want to learn. My teacher taught me that. Matthew Antoine, So I think it was a period of his life where he just became more and more disenfranchised with the idea that God could be responsible for such suffering.
And the play doesn't let that go either. Like, your question's really well taken, because one of the easy ways to screw this play up is to make Ambrose a bad guy. Right. Like, it would be very easy for us to have pushed him in a direction where he is this crazy religious guy pushing on top of this other cult, and it isn't. Ambrose's words echo through the whole play. I mean, what he talks about is the thing that drives everybody forward. It's just we needed to find a different channel to get to it. The author cares about writing and reading, and he cares about sort of giving life through that process. But all those words deepen you, all the stuff Ambrose says, he ends up by the end of the play really being vindicated. And especially the line, and we've talked about this a lot, that idea that I'm here to relieve pain. Like, that's really what this is about relieving pain. And that's so important to people. How can you possibly throw this away with helping people, caring for people? So we spent a hunk of time with that, and it was one of the things we really cared about, not letting the religion become the bad guy and see the whole play through Grant's angry eyes, right? And so that's part of what we were doing, understanding that situation.
All right, Mr. Milner, you're next. Just let me throw a kid in between. I want to hear from the children too, so I like this group right here. One of you guys, you.